Disease. What comes to your mind when you hear this word? Sickness? Death? Well, how about longevity? If that last one seemed out of place, you might want to consider the ideas put forth by Dr. Sharon Mooallem in his work, Survival of the Sickest. Dr. Mooallem's book centers around the surprising connections between disease and longevity. It discusses how certain ailments humans have today may have helped us survive in the past. Chapter 1. Ironing it out. Ironing it out focuses on, well, iron. Iron is necessary to almost every form of life. In humans, iron carries oxygen from the lungs to where it's needed in the body. It also helps to detoxify poisons and convert sugar into energy. But too much iron is a problem. Hemochromatosis, a hereditary disease caused by a genetic mutation, disrupts the way the body metabolizes iron. The body thinks it is always low on iron, so it absorbs way too much of it, which can be deadly. Interestingly, those with hemochromatosis during the Middle Ages were more likely to survive the bubonic plague. This is because iron is overloaded into a lot of cells in the body, but not to the macrophages, white blood cells in charge of finding and destroying disease in the body. The plague needs iron to survive, so without it, the plague agents starve to death. Take that, plague! Chapter 2. A spoonful of sugar helps the temperature go down. Sugar acts as a natural antifreeze. So, the higher the blood sugar levels and lower the water content in the body, the colder the body can get without freezing. The wood frog survives in the winter because of this. It reduces its water content and increases its blood sugar levels before winter, then literally freezes during the winter, only to thaw after winter with minimal damage. Anyway, it's possible that those with diabetes were more likely to survive during the last ice age, which only lasted for 3 years, due to the increase of glucose levels in the blood. Crazy, right? Chapter 3. The cholesterol also rises. Vitamin D is super important. It aids in the function of the heart, the nervous system, the blood clotting process, the immune system, and bone and blood health. What is one of the main ways we get vitamin D? That's right, the sun. However, too much sun exposure also leads to a deficiency in the body's folic acid levels. Now that's a love-hate relationship. Darker skin contains more melanin, which leads to less sunlight getting through the skin, meaning less vitamin D. So, people with darker skin have higher levels of cholesterol to help work with the vitamin D they do receive. The darker skin also aids in protecting folic acid levels, which lighter skin does not do because the lack of melanin lets in more sunlight to gain more vitamin D. This makes sense because lighter skinned people descended from Europeans who lived in areas with less sunlight, unlike those from Africa. Chapter 4. Hey bud, can you do me a fava? For people with favaism, eating fava beans is deadly because the free radicals in the beans attack their red blood cells. On the other hand, people with favaism are less likely to die from malaria because mosquitoes that carry malaria do not like how the red blood cells taste. Like fava beans, other plants produce poison to deter predators. Plants only want animals to take their fruit to help spread their offspring, but that's it. Chapter 5. Of microbes in men. It is important to remember that our bodies work together with millions of microbes to our benefit and theirs. However, there are microbes that are a little more selfish, causing damage to their host bodies for their own purposes of survival and reproduction. These microbes, including guinea worms, cholera, and the common cold, have varying levels of virulence, the severity or harmfulness of a disease. The virulence of the microbes depends on their means of traveling from host to host. Chapter 6. Jump into the gene pool. DNA can be changed through mutations, but also through other factors. Jumping genes can just jump wherever they want on the junk DNA, the 97% of our DNA that doesn't contain the coding for proteins. Additionally, the accidentally coined term Lamarckian idea that inherited acquired traits can be passed on is kind of right, which we'll come back to later. We also learned that we have genetic coding from viruses, but don't freak out about that. Chapter 7. Methyl Madness, Road to the Final Phenotype. According to the book Epigenetics is the study of how children can inherit and express seemingly new traits from their parents without changes in the underlying DNA. Sounds kind of like that Lamarckian idea, right? Well, kind of. Epigenetics suggests that the gene instructions, or the genotype, stays the same, but something else overrides them. That something else is called a methyl group, which carries out DNA methylation, or the changing of the way a gene expresses itself without changing the gene itself. This means that the phenotype of an offspring can be influenced by the actions of the mother, father, and even the grandmother, because the grandmother carried the mother, who carried all her eggs, with one of them being the offspring. Chapter 8. That's Life. Why You and Your iPod Must Die. We are, in fact, programmed to die. But don't be sad, it's kind of a good thing, for the species at least. The Hayflick limit states that cells can only divide about 50 to 60 times before things start becoming defective, which is aging and ultimately death. This limit is meant to help prevent the overdivision of cells, which is cancer. Additionally, when old members of a species die, it leaves room for newer members, like iPod generations. So yes, dying is inevitable. Okay, so how does the information in this book relate to the main ideas of biology? Well, Big Idea 1 states that the process of evolution drives the diversity and unity of life. Remember hemochromatosis? Those with hemochromatosis in certain populations were more likely to survive against certain conditions, long enough to reproduce, and so more people in those certain regions, mainly Europe, inherited it. However, people living in areas where the plague wasn't as prevalent did not inherit this disease as often, causing diversity in the human population. Additionally, Chapter 5 centers around how parasites, like all other species, evolve with two goals in mind: survive and reproduce. Parasites adapt and evolve to be able to survive in their host bodies despite the introduction of new medicines. For example, 8 years after the introduction of penicillin in 1928, 40% of all staph infections were penicillin resistant, which suggests that the bacteria evolved to survive against the new medicine. The evolved bacteria proves that life continues to evolve within a changing environment. Additionally, Big Idea 2 states that biological systems utilize free energy and molecular building blocks to grow, to reproduce, and to maintain dynamic homeostasis. Outside factors affect how the body reacts in order to survive. Remember the wood frog? In extreme cold, certain animals such as the wood frog reduce their internal water supply and increase blood sugar, a natural antifreeze, in order to survive the extreme temperatures. The body is less likely to freeze with more sugar in the blood, thus helping the body maintain homeostasis by regulating body temperature. Additionally, a newer theory brought up in the book suggests that humans evolved through semi-aquatic apes, meaning apes that could wade into the water for food, hence how humans stand on two legs, or stay on land. Apes lost hair and gained fat under the skin to aid in water movement, showing the changes in the body due to changes in the environment. The fat also helps the apes, and all aquatic mammals, to stay warm in the water, helping to maintain homeostasis. The third big idea states that living systems store, retrieve, transmit, and respond to information essential to life processes. Going back to hemochromatosis for the last time, the disease is a result of a genetic mutation. The mutation supports the idea that the processing of genetic information is imperfect. As much as we like to think that our cells transport DNA information perfectly, that is simply not the case, leading to a variety of other disorders due to mutations. We will finish by going back to epigenetics. Until recent years, many scientists agree that parents pass traits onto their offspring that are inheritable, and that whatever traits the parents had, the offspring would receive those traits in some combination. However, new research suggests that some outside factors can turn genes on or off. For example, a study at Duke University showed that when given nutrients, fat yellow mice, with the genetics for obesity, gave birth to skinny brown mice, which opened the door for this new idea. The transmitting of DNA is the same, so the genotype is the same, but certain genes are muted or turned on. In conclusion, it's safe to say that the more we learn about evolution, the more we realize how little we know about it.